Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. It is Thursday, September the 15th, and guess what? We're full bore into week 2 as we have a great Thursday night football matchup between the Chargers visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. So very early on, we get a great AFC West matchup and a chance to talk about one of our favorite quarterbacks, John, and that's Justin Herbert. So we're definitely going to talk about him because he's got a big opportunity here pretty early on in the season. I know it's 17-game season, but this is a pretty big game right off the bat.
Without question, and the Chargers went in and beat Kansas City last year in Kansas City, which was a surprise. And they looked like they were right there, maybe in a control or at least in the race to win the division. And then we remember they lost to the Chiefs later in the season at home when Brandon Staley refused to kick a field goal on multiple occasions, and they ended up losing in overtime. So they had an opportunity to maybe steal that division last year, missed the playoffs at 9-8. But this should be fun. I think these are obviously two of the four great young quarterbacks that we talk about all the time, along with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. Those are the four young dudes that I think are going to be, running the league for the next, 5, 6, 7 years, however long it may be. This should be a good matchup.
And look, not surprisingly, before we get to this game, we'll give it its due justice before we get off the air today. Not surprisingly, I mean, those are the guys that are currently right now in the MVP race. I know it's early, but odds makers don't believe in it being too early to talk MVP. So they've already been pushing them since the offseason. And there's been a slight little shift in the MVP odds, and I've been looking at Caesar Sportsbook for this. So if anyone wants to reference it, excuse me. Patrick Mahomes, not surprisingly, after his 5-touchdown performance, leapfrogged Josh Allen to currently hold the best odds, I believe, at plus 450. Let me bring that up. Yeah, plus 450. I wrote it yesterday, so I should know this. Josh Allen moves down to number 2 at plus 550. Justin Herbert moves into the third spot at plus 700. Tom Brady plus 1200, and Lamar Jackson at plus 1300. Getting ahead of your guy, Mr. 2-time reigning MVP, Aaron Rodgers, who, not surprisingly, after week 1, and again, this is all based on what we've seen after week 1, clearly was not having a good week. So, surprised? Anything jump out to you? I mean, Lamar Jackson, pretty solid game against the Jets. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't quite pay attention to that game as much as some of the others. So maybe I'm missing a better performance out of Lamar Jackson. But I was pretty interested to see that he jumped Aaron Rodgers early.
Yeah, he had a nice performance, and Rodgers and the Packers scored 1 touchdown. They were pretty much dominated by the Minnesota Vikings. I'm surprised Kirk Cousins didn't vault up a little bit. He played really well. He's like the favorite among the out of left field candidates. Matt Ryan won the MVP in 2016. Occasionally you'll get that quarterback that no one expects before the season that just has a great season and their team plays well and they get MVP votes and sometimes even win the award. I think he could be that guy if the Vikings are as good as we both think they are. But, really no surprises there. Josh Allen was probably hurt a little bit because of the 2 interceptions. One wasn't his fault. The other one was. I thought he was pretty darn good against the Rams on Thursday night. That was a standalone game, so a lot of people saw that. And then, obviously, Joe Burrow moved down the ranks quite a bit because he had, 4 interceptions, a fumble, and he was sacked 7 times and nearly won the game. But he went down a little bit.
I know you can't win an MVP in 1 week, certainly not in week 1, but can you lose it?
I don't think so, Ian. And the reason I'm saying that is because Rodgers had an awful week 1 last year against New Orleans.
But he didn't throw 4 interceptions.
No, he never does that. I mean, his worst games are 2, yeah.
Like
4's bad.
Like I thought maybe had the Bengals somehow pulled that game off. Now, after a while, you just get like, okay, you've had so many chances to win this game. Like, I'm not going to give you credit if you finally actually do it. Now I'm just like, okay, come on. And ultimately they didn't win the game, but could you because think about it. Think about what lost Tom Brady the MVP last year. The second game against the New Orleans Saints. That alone. And he didn't have nearly as bad of a game as Joe Burrow did. So could Joe Burrow have completely obliterated his chances to win MVP this season? I think so. Right.
Yeah.
And when I'm watching it and I'm watching the interception ticker for him go up, that's what I was thinking when I was watching that game. I was like, okay, his like you're done. Like that's it. Like I don't care what kind of season he has, assuming he doesn't go the next 16 games throwing 56 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I'm assuming something outrageously unlikely isn't going to happen. Even if he has a really good season, even if he has what Tom Brady had last year, 43 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and what 5,300 yards. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Hmm.
think in one game, in game one, he completely eliminated any shot he had, which is surprising because this isn't just this isn't Joe Flacco. Like Joe Flacco didn't have a shot. I'm talking guys that had a realistic shot, or at least were
Hmm.
in the conversation. Even though I'd say Joe Burrow is probably fringe, because I think there's obviously a few guys ahead of them that you would probably say, oh, they're much better candidate. But even so, I think Joe Burrow, had a legitimate opportunity to emerge in that race, and I think he completely ruined it in week one.
And, obviously, if they lose a division by one game, you can look back to that
Oh yeah.
loss against Pittsburgh, right? So, and I think you have to pretty much win 12 or more games with the 17-game schedule to be in real contention, right? I mean, Joe Burrow, we both love Joe Burrow, but they were 10-7 last year. Let's say they go 10-7 again, and Baltimore wins the division. I don't think a 10-7 quarterback can win the MVP because there's so many great quarterbacks out there. I know there's always this pushback of like there aren't that many really good quarterbacks. I think there are a lot of really great young quarterbacks. Let's keep aside the two old dudes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when have you seen so much talent? Look at the AFC. I didn't even mention Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's probably the fifth best quarterback in the AFC, and he's pretty darn good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Russell Wilson, and you go all the way from there. How good these are. I always put those four guys at the top. Burrow, Allen, Mahomes, and Herbert. But you got to put Lamar in there. The guy's won an MVP.
Mm-hmm.
He's won 75% of his starts. That's really impressive.
Well,
so yeah, I mean, so if someone has an off year, they're not going to win it. There was a time, didn't it feel like in the mid 2000s, it was like Brady and Manning, like whichever guy had a better statistical season was probably going to win the MVP.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with you for the most part. I think the Brady Manning thing was because it was Brady Manning. Because let's not forget, there were some other really good quarterbacks in that era as well. I mean, Brett Favre in that first part of that era. Obviously, you talk about the Donovan McNabbs and the Steve McNair early on, obviously, and there's
the guy I thought was going to always jump in there too, not to interrupt you, was Carson Palmer.
Yeah,
I really thought before that knee.
Yeah.
I thought before that knee he was trending to be like the third best quarterback in the AFC. I mean, he was never going to surpass Brady or Manning, but he looked like a guy that was going to be a stud. And he had a nice career, but he was a little bit short because of those injuries.
I mean, look, I think you have Brady and Manning, who I believe are two of the three greatest quarterbacks. To avoid arguments with some people of the Super Bowl era, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yep.
But two of the three greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, and they went toe to toe. So yeah, I do believe, regardless of everything else that happened. I mean, Drew Brees, I mean, is forgot. I mean, think about I don't necessarily have him as high as some people do, but I mean, he's an all-time great who never sniffed the MVP because of those two guys. So, excuse me. I think you're right in the sense that I agree. There are so many great young quarterbacks in this league right now. And I think for a number of reasons, that's the case. Primarily, the shift over the last 5 to 8 years into what has been trending for the last 20 years, which is offense. So now you have college quarterbacks coming and playing the same game in the pros that they played in college, or at least a very similar thing, because 15 years ago there wasn't RPOs, there weren't, you know what I mean, there was a very traditional offense. It was relative to what it is now a bit neutered. Again, I go back to people, and this was a discussion recently, Patrick Mahomes having the greatest start of all time, blah 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 blah. His first season in 2018 was incredibly impressive, but if you go back and kind of account for inflation. I know everyone's talking about inflation. We're going to talk about that in terms of football. If you go back and look at Kurt Warner's season in 1999, in which obviously he won the NFL MVP, the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl MVP, his statistics compare greatly to what Patrick Mahomes did. And the biggest thing I point to, and I'm not a huge passer rating fan, but I think this in many ways kind of puts into perspective the difference in the two eras that don't necessarily seem that far apart. But at, I think his 100, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it was roughly 106 passer rating, was over 30 points higher than the league average at the time. Patrick Mahomes, who had a higher passer rating than Kurt Warner in 2018 than he'd had in 1999, the difference was only about 20, maybe in the high teens. So relative to the comparable competition, it wasn't as impressive as Kurt Warner. So I think people don't see that necessarily because they just see the raw numbers. So I think in general, quarterbacks, more favorable offense, harsher rules on the defense are allowing some of these young guys to flourish, in which in years past they wouldn't have probably got these opportunities, certainly not this early on. And it's great for the game, because I agree with you. I think there are a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league. And I think that's great for the game.
Yeah, I mean, and I think these guys, like you mentioned, Ian, these guys are better prepared now because they're getting 1,000 passing attempts in college, right? I mean, I'm the old guy here. Burt Jones was one of my favorite quarterbacks growing up. He was
also one of Bill Belichick's.
He was the average. Oh, loved him. Absolutely loved him. Got to coach him. In 1975 as an assistant with the Colts. Burt Jones led the Colts to, I believe it was 9 straight regular season wins, got them into the playoffs. He was the Aaron Rodgers of his day. I mean, if you just go on Google and watch highlights of Burt Jones, it doesn't even look like he belongs in the 70s. I mean, the ball came out of his hand differently than everybody else that was playing. But, a lot of injuries in a short career. He didn't throw the ball much at LSU. Like, he was the number 2 pick in the 73 draft. I think he had fewer than 500 passing attempts in college in 3 years at LSU. It might be, 400. But they could see the raw talent. Now, when guys are that good, they're throwing the ball around 35, 40 times. Bryce Young's going to throw the ball 30, 35 times a game at Alabama. The only thing that might keep that number lower is that they're up 42-0 and he may be out of the game. But the point is, these guys are so better prepared now. This is all they do. But it's kind of interesting, Ian. A lot of these young quarterbacks that we're looking at, I think they're as good as they are because they played other sports. Like, like some of these guys come in and they're like starting football camp at 7 years old and quarterback camp at 9. And I think they're almost burnt out, almost like tennis players by the time they get to the NFL. The guys that we talk about all the time, Joe Burrow was all state in basketball. Patrick Mahomes was a sensational baseball player. I believe Josh Allen played every sport in high school. In fact, he wasn't even recruited coming out of high school. He had to send, letters and emails to coaches and got one scholarship offer. They played other sports. I think that helps. Brady was a catcher, right? He was drafted by the Expos. I think that helps them actually because they're not burnt out. And, a lot of these other sports transition and help, footwork. I'm sure Brady's footwork's as good as it is because he was a catcher. You have to have good footwork to be a catcher, right? And Mahomes was a middle infield and all this other stuff that, I'm kind of blabbering on about. But I think that's why there's so many, these young quarterbacks that played other sports is important, but they are better prepared than ever at this point.
And they're also, they have the ability to stay better prepared as well. I mean, there's more training available. There's more knowledge of keeping your body in shape, so on and so forth. So, these athletes who are athletes, I know people sit there and laugh at Tom Brady running, but he's an athlete. I mean, the guy got drafted by 2 professional organizations and is playing in his 23rd NFL season. The guy is an athlete. I know, we get to laugh at his, combine photos and all that stuff and how he kind of just gallops on the field. But look, the reality of it is, you're going to ask me who's one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd be like, well, Tom Brady's right up there. And when I talk about mobility, it's about mobility in the pocket, which is, in my opinion, a far more important quality than being able to run outside of the pocket and avoid defenders that way, because there's more control inside the pocket. When you're outside the pocket, there's less control. There's more variables. Inside the pocket, you can manipulate the defense better and have more control of what's happening not only in front of you, but to your peripherals when it comes to your linemen and everything like that. So to me, I look at when someone says, "Oh, he's not athletic," I'm like, what are you talking about? He's one of the most athletic
Right.
guys I know. I mean, well, I don't know. I wish I do, but that's a discussion for another day. But um, no, so there's a lot of great things happening. Obviously, it's very pro offense, and I think that's great because I think it creates um I mean, you're getting creative play callers. They have the advantage, and guys like Andy Reid, guys that can
Hmm.
create because there's opportunities to create space in this game now. I mean, there was before, but you know what I mean. Like back in the day, with defensive backs being able to basically attach themselves to your hip all the way down
Hmm.
the field, it didn't open up as many opportunities. Like, I mean, you can and again, depending on how the officials call things like rub routes and pick plays, if they're lenient, which for the most part they kind of have been, John, when it
Hmm.
comes to, I mean, how many plays have you looked at and said that's a, I mean, if you're going by the rule book, that's a pick, that's a illegal
Yep.
screen or whatever you want to call it. Um, but they allow it to happen, and that certainly creates offense. So, which again, these quarterbacks benefit. You have to have talent to benefit. Just because these opportunities are there, it's not like it's going to create great quarterbacks. No, you have to be a good one. But I think these just have, or they've been giving better opportunities across the board to succeed, and I think that's great because again, I mean, each and every week we get to see the quarterback duel. There's so many other factors: defense, player, big running backs, all that stuff. I get that. I understand. But let's face it, John. This is a quarterback league. The most
Hmm.
intriguing matchups always have marquee quarterbacks at the forefront.
Yeah, tonight's a prime example, right? Patrick
Ah,
Mahomes,
very
Justin Herbert,
nice.
right?
Very
You like
nice. I
that?
like that. I like
I'm
that.
here
That's
to assist you any way I can.
I like that. Should I call you a John Westbrook? Would you like that? Little assist.
Uh,
Do you want
well,
that?
no. John Westbrook would mean I would have missed the target,
Oh,
or
that's true.
whatever.
Okay. Well,
So
I mean,
yeah,
I know I'm talking at least you're getting
John
assists.
James,
Well,
John
well,
James, I think would
well,
be good. I mean,
well. Then all of a sudden, now the host becomes a little bit insignificant when you're
that's
comparing
true. That's true.
yourself
That's
to
true.
to
Yeah, I'm
LeBron
more.
James.
You know
So
what? Draymond Green, the perfect guy that
okay, all
is the
right,
role guy that fits in and does whatever is needed on any given day. Call me Draymond.
all right.
He
Fair
hosts
enough.
he
Fair
hosts a
enough.
very successful podcast, right?
Sure. I mean, like he likes to talk. I'll give him that much. So,
Oh yeah.
um, okay. So, anyways, obviously we you know two MVP votes. I don't even think we mentioned the top two as much as I wanted to, but we can do that now because it's relevant to our Thursday night football discussion that we're about to have. Um, Justin Herbert obviously is a guy that we both are big fans of, and think, if not this year, eventually he's going to win an MVP. It feels like he's the type of guy that can do it. I mean, he has one around him and the team. I mean, we all know that you need team success as well as with individual success to win these awards. Um, Quite a campaign nowadays too. It feels almost political, like in some form or fashion, whether it's through you directly, the player. I think Aaron Rodgers did a little lobbying last year, maybe a little subtle lobbying, maybe not so direct, but he worked the media. He knows what he's doing.
He
Or
relitigated the 2012 election.
yeah,
He
yeah.
goes, I didn't. I should have won it that year. I don't know what the hell happened. I didn't get as many votes. He's
well,
beautiful.
well,
He
whether it's
really. I mean, he's so funny. I find him amusing. To be honest
well,
with you,
I
I'm
mean,
sure
I
most
do.
people hate him, but I.
I do too. Hey, look, I've always found him amusing. I
Yeah.
always push back at some of the ridiculous narratives around him, but I do find him amusing. But yeah, look, I mean, whether it's through the player or through a third party, I mean, just literally to and this is the kind of thing that I think favors Patrick Mahomes because I think you're going to get that third party like over the
Mhm.
top like campaigning for him right from the get go. And look, I mean, as good a candidate as any to win the MVP, I think it is going to get a little ridiculous because I found now, John, that this narrative, there's this narrative going out around that Patrick Mahomes is the most disrespected quarterback ever, and I'm sitting here thinking to
Wow.
myself, like, I know, right? It's at first it was kind of like, in the underground, the really diehard Chiefs fans, and now you're starting to see it kind of leak into like the mainstream media, sports media. It's like Patrick Mahomes so disrespected, and I'm thinking to myself, like, these same people are the ones in like week 10 of 2018 who are talking about how Patrick Mahomes was on GOAT pace and how he was already better than Brady and so on and so forth, all these players. I'm like, do you understand that, like, you're upset that people are getting excited about some of these other quarterbacks, not necessarily not disrespecting Patrick Mahomes. You know what I mean? Like, people aren't like
Hmm?
disrespecting him. And like, he even kind of said that too this offseason. And I was kind of puzzled by that. Like, he kind of lumped himself in. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, people for like 6 months praised this guy's incomplete pass in a Super Bowl in which he played poorly and then made excuses as to why it wasn't really that bad of a game. So I'm sitting there scratching my head, like, how the hell is he the most disrespected quarterback? But John, here we are. The most disrespected quarterback overcame adversity in week 1 to 5 touchdowns, 4 of which came within like 3 yards of the line of scrimmage or from the end zone. But hey, I digress. We're not going to criticize him because, of course, we used all that energy criticizing Brady for so long for that very thing, which wasn't actually true. But the narrative, John, existed. And I think the narrative right now around Patrick Mahomes is he's been overlooked. He's really been the best quarterback in the game. No, he hasn't, but that's what people are saying. So I think that's going to favor him in the long run, even if he has a comparable statistical season to, say, Tom Brady, who maybe might lead the league again. Say he does. But Patrick Mahomes, he's the MVP, and that's how these things work. So do I think Justin Herbert has a realistic chance this season? Probably not, because I think the campaign for Mahomes is already getting too strong, and Josh Allen too. So those two things are going to butt heads later this season. But he's certainly a guy who will be in the mix for years to come. Certainly when Brady and Rodgers retire, because someone has to take their place, right?
Yeah, I mean those will be the leading candidates. I think a lot of it, as I said earlier, ties into team success. If the Chargers win the division, then I think Herbert has a chance to win the MVP. Now, if Buffalo goes 14-3 and is the 1 seed, and Josh Allen puts up all sorts of crazy numbers, then I think he's the favorite. So it does come down to team success, and
Well, even
I think
even
sometimes
I'd say, even, and not to interrupt, sorry, but I'd say
that's
even
okay.
even in that situation though, I feel like in the same way that Patrick Mahomes is going to have the campaign behind him, I think Josh Allen too,
Sure.
because he's got
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
preseason momentum. So you
Yep.
know, Herbert, the Chargers could go in, win the division, take over. That thing. Maybe they beat Kansas City twice, but it's not going to matter because Buffalo's going to win the division, and
Right.
it's likely going to be because Josh Allen has another really good season. So, and I think in that way, I think the people would vote heavily in favor of Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I picked him before the season to win the MVP. Again, it's also narrative driven. So the narrative with Patrick Mahomes might be, well, you know what? They traded Tyreek Hill, and people said he wasn't going to be the same, and now he's even better. He's spreading the ball among these other wide receivers that they brought in. So that could be part of it. The disrespect thing is something that athletes use all the time, right? I mean, Rodney Harrison for years with the Patriots talked about how they were the most disrespected team in the history of sports.
That's funny you say that, because I just looked at our chat thing, and our good friend Joel from Hull. Sounds like Mahomes went to the Rodney Harrison School of Disrespect.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, you guys are right on the same. And to
I
your
didn't see
credit,
that either.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
don't see that. You're on the phone,
no.
so you can't see the screen. So
Joel, nice. Great minds think alike, see?
there you go.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I just
I
thought it
love
was,
that. That's
yeah,
great. When someone agrees with me, I
yeah.
like that. But yeah,
There you
I
go.
mean, look, Tom Brady still has this narrative, that he's still somehow trying to prove everybody wrong. I mean, Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame speech, he sounded like a guy that was the most disrespected player in the history of all sports, even though he's, the
I
most
love that
beloved.
speech, by the way.
Oh, I'm
One
sure
of
you
my
did. Yeah, I
all-time
mean,
favorite
talk about
speeches.
yeah.
Forget about
Yeah, no,
historical figures. I love the pettiness from
oh
Michael
man.
Jordan. That
Oh,
was great.
nobody. But all those great, I call them sociopaths, and I use it in a loving way. Jordan, Kobe in basketball, Brady in football, Tiger Woods, obviously at golf, and then I put Barry Bonds in there. They're all just they're sociopaths, and that's it. Obviously they haven't killed anybody,
Yeah.
but they go out and they're so driven. I mean, Barry Bonds once said the coolest thing is walking up to the plate at Dodger Stadium and being booed by 56,000 people. Now, the average person would probably poop their pants in that situation, right? He cherished it. That was the highlight of his life. And I think, Brady and Kobe and Jordan, all these guys kind of feel the same way. So, yeah, Brady's still here going, you don't think I can do this at age 45? Let me show you. I mean, that's how they get to where they get. So, yeah, I think that Mahomes is trying to maybe channel that a little bit. And no one's disrespected him. I mean, for the most part, everybody thinks he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I love watching him play. I do. I think he's a pretty good dude. And, he's fun to watch. All these guys are fun to watch. They're unique, got their own skill set, their own style. But, yeah, I mean, I think we'll come down a lot to the team success. But I think it's Josh Allen's really, because that narrative with Buffalo is just – do you get the sense, Ian, that a lot of the country's kind of pulling for Buffalo too? It's almost like, they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost. They've got kind of a crazy fan base. And he seems like a really good dude. He carries himself really well. I mean, he doesn't seem like he's got an enormous ego. Yeah, pity. Exactly. Yeah, it's almost like in 2016, everyone's like, all right, let the Cubs finally win the World Series to shut everyone up.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. Obviously, my perspective is a little bit different because I'm a Patriots fan. So the Bills' misery just brings me joy. So I don't want to see them success. Actually, no, I want to see them. You know what I want to see, right? And for those who don't know, I will tell you once again. What I want to see is I do want the Bill. I picked the Bills to have the best record in the league. I think they're going to have the best record in the league. I think they're going to win the AFC. I think they're going to get all the way to the Super Bowl, only to look across the field and see Tom Brady playing in his last career game. And let me tell you, there is 0.0 chance that the Bills would not get absolutely shellacked by Tom Brady in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I think the shell shockedness, the fans, the franchise. I know the franchise isn't a physical being, but I think the franchise, encompassing everything, will just be shell shocked. Like, oh my God, we finally get here, only to see the guy who's 173-2 against us over the last 25 years and have basically.
And that's not an exaggeration either.
No,
that record is pretty much what it is.
It's pretty close. I'm not, I'm inflating the numbers a little bit. I'm doing a little, exaggeration, but it's really, I mean, the idea is they've been dominated. And then look, they lost last year to the Buccaneers, and I'm not saying that they're going to get blown out. I don't think that realistically would happen, but I think the idea of going up against Tom Brady, who, again, it would bring me so much joy just to see Buffalo have that just rug pulled out from under them just before they get to the finish line and have it be Tom Brady, because then it would be satisfying for me. But that's me, John.
No, that's all. I mean, you're very much a sick person, but it is delightful to think about that. Talk about Schadenfreude on steroids. But I'm trying to think now which conference championship game goes first this year. Last year it was the AFC went first, so the NFC will go first this year. So so if Tampa wins the NFC championship game, it's a 3:00 game. Then Buffalo at 6:30 goes out to play in the AFC championship game. They may just punt. They may just say the hell with it. We're not going to win. We're going to go face him in 2 weeks. What's the point?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean that would bring me joy, John. I'd be a very very happy person. But long way to go before we get to that. But before we get too far off, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, they go tonight. We have Thursday Night Football in Kansas City. Obviously, we've talked about this quite a bit. The Chargers, I thought, Chargers, specifically Brandon Staley, screwed this team over last year in a game against the Chiefs to win the division. Not to win the division, but for all intents and purposes, I think if the Chargers win that game, they're well in control of their own destiny. And I think they did everything in their power to not win that game. And I think that's going to haunt Brandon Staley and the Chargers until they do something about it. And look, they have a chance to do something about it today. Like I thought the Chiefs played very good against a bad Arizona team. I don't think Arizona's good. Certainly not with DeAndre Hopkins not playing. Um, so let's see what Kansas City does against a pretty good Chargers team. I'm holding reservation because I don't know who's going to be healthy. We talked, or I talked about Khalil Mack, and I said, well, if Khalil Mack is 2017 Khalil Mack, then this Chargers offense, I mean, our defense is quite formidable. I mean, it's scary. I mean, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. I mean, there's a lot more to it too because look, J.C. Jackson didn't play. I still think they have a strong secondary. I've never seen like Asante Samuel Jr. is an exact replica clone of his father. And by that, I mean, whenever I see him play, whenever I see him attack the ball, whenever see him move around the field, he looks exactly like his father. I mean, it's remarkable to me. Like which is fun because like I always liked Asante Samuel as a player. I know again, people criticize him a lot for the Super Bowl 42 non-pick, but I watch Asante Samuel Jr. play, and I'm like, my God, it is an exact clone of his father.
Yeah, it's kind of eerie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And look, if he's your second best cornerback, that's pretty good because you got J.C. Jackson, who didn't play last week and probably won't play tonight, but they'll get him up to speed. You're so right about Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. I mean, with those two guys coming off the edge, I could play cornerback for the Chargers because you don't have to cover anyone for more than 2 seconds.
I'd pay to see that.
Because those guys are going to be bearing up. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm stout, I'm 5'9", so I'd be more of the short corner. I'm not the long corner like Stephon Gilmore or Richard Sherman. I'm more of the stout corner. I'd be good against the run, though. I'd set the edge out there.
Yeah.
But you don't have to cover wide receivers or backs or anyone for more than 2 seconds with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa bearing down on you. I said last week, I think the Chargers have more high-end talent than any team in the league. I rattled off 10 guys who I think are Pro Bowl caliber players, and I didn't even mention the rookie Zion Johnson from BC, who was just opening up these massive holes last week. I mean, he's a stud. Their offensive line is tremendous. Obviously, we love the quarterback, all sorts of wide receivers, and Austin Eckler, and Derwin James is a top flight player. They're loaded. They really are. The coach is going to hold them back. Maybe they should just tell him to get out of the way. I mean, that might be the best thing to do. Let the leaders on offense and defense set the tone, and I think they'd be better off than having Brandon Staley, refuse to kick field goals.
No, I agree, and we kind of mentioned it briefly the other day. Sean Payton would be, I think, be the perfect guy for this team, and I think it should seriously be considered if that's going to happen. But look, tonight you have a Chargers team that has won 2 of the last 3 against Kansas City. Obviously, not the last one, which was in December of last year. But regardless of whether or not they have J.C. Jackson out there, like I said, I don't believe I think you're right. I don't think he's going out tonight. They have a really good opportunity to make a statement early on, and I think ultimately these two teams are going to split the season. I don't think either team's going to win both games. That would be pretty surprising in my view. But I kind of feel like the Chargers are going to get the first hit in. And I think both these teams are going to actually win on the road and not at home. I mean, the Chargers, whatever. I mean, do they really have a home, John? No.
No. Eighth most popular football team in LA.
Yeah.
And I'm not being hyperbolic there.
No.
They're literally the 8th most popular football team in LA. And that includes colleges. They're behind USC and UCLA.
Well, and look, I mean, it's funny. It's not surprising because those are essentially powerhouse college teams. But yeah. So I jokes aside, I do think the Chargers have a good opportunity here on a short week to kind of. I think they had a better test in week 1 against a divisional opponent. I think again I'm just really not high on Arizona right now. Certainly not without their best player on the field, and I say that with a purpose because I do think DeAndre Hopkins is their best player. Look, we're gonna get a pretty entertaining game tonight. I'd say that. I really wish J.C. Jackson was going to be out here because I want to see this Chargers defense at its full capacity. But regardless, like I said, if you're getting the type of pressure you're getting from Khalil Mack and the type of play you're getting from him, it's going to be very, very difficult for this Chiefs offense to do at will what they did yesterday. Like you're not going to get these like little shuttle passes, little underhand like passes off in front of these guys. You're just not going to do it.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very interested to see how this Chargers defense responds to this offense.
Yeah, I like them tonight. I know we'll eventually give out our picks, but I would say the Chargers are probably my favorite AFC team just because I like the quarterback a lot, and the uniform blows me away too. I don't know. I sound like this fan with no soul or anything, but I love the uniform. I mean, last week they were wearing the powder blue with the yellow pants. I mean, it was spectacular to look at. But I think it's going to be a really good game. These teams tend to have kind of wild games, right? Like high scoring. You got the two quarterbacks that are going to have a lot of wow moments. So it should be Thursday night games generally aren't very good, but I think the NFL purposely gave some good Thursday night games because Amazon is paying $1 billion a year for the right to stream these games.
Well, they should use this song, obviously. The greatest theme song ever. And any chance that I get to use it, I'm always going to do that.
Love it.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, like I said, I think Kansas City very impressive in Week 1 at will what they did to the Cardinals, who inexplicably I think they blitzed like 55 or 56% of the time, and you just don't do that against elite quarterbacks. I don't care who you are. Very rarely that works. Like you have to get pressure with 4. And look, San Diego. Now I got the damn song stuck in my head, and now I'm going to call them the San Diego Chargers. You know what? For whatever, they're the San Diego Chargers. That's all.
I still think of them that way. Why the hell did
whatever.
they move? They're a pretty good fan base. Yeah.
Technically, they don't even play in Los Angeles, so who the hell cares what we call them? They're the San Diego Chargers. So on this show, I'm handing down a decree. I run the show, so guess what? We're calling them the San Diego Chargers, or at the very least, if we do call them the San Diego Chargers, we're not going to correct ourselves. We're just going to assume that we're right. So no, but the Chargers can get pressure with 4 guys. Like I said, going back to the Bosa and Khalil Mack, and then whoever the hell you want to put in between them, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get pressure, and I think that's what's going to disrupt this Chiefs offense, because I know, again, we're looking at, look, Patrick Mahomes did this without Tyreek Hill. I'm like, this is great. Yes, he's going to have really good games without Tyreek Hill. He's a very good quarterback. That's not the point. I think the point is, over the long haul, the moments that Tyreek Hill was big isn't going to be there, because as much as they were great on offense, I didn't see anyone take a pass 3 yards and run 75 yards like Tyreek Hill can do.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're watching the Dolphins and Patriots, you could see how important, look, I think both players are very good. I don't think one necessarily needed the other, and we'll see over time. But we saw Tyreek Hill on the field, and he looked like the same type of weapon. Now, again, the quarterback wasn't as accurate as he was selling over the offseason, but you could see the difference he made in the weapon that he is when that is needed. And look, they went to the AFC Championship game because Tyreek Hill caught a pass and ran the length of the field. Like, that's going to come back and haunt them eventually. There's going to be situations where he is missed. This idea that you can just get rid of Tyreek Hill and have it not be an issue. Well, no, not when your team relies so much on yards after the catch and the things that he does. Travis Kelce is excellent. But for the Chargers, they have guys that can cover these guys, or at least limit what they can do. So if you can kind of contain Travis Kelce, all of a sudden you need guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, maybe Aaron Rodgers misses him a little bit too, and some of these other guys to do the stuff that Tyreek Hill maybe did, or maybe at least replicate it. And I don't know necessarily if they can do that over the course of an entire season. You're going to be able to do that against bad teams like the Cardinals, sure. And, like I said, bad team. I call them a bad team because, again, they blitzed any elite tier quarterback. You blitz that much, you're asking to get absolutely shredded. And that's what happened.
Yep.
You gave Patrick Mahomes easy completions in short distance. So, again, what do you expect when you do the same thing over? So yeah, it's a bad team. I think the Chargers can account for that. I don't think they're going to allow that. I think they're going to get pressure and at least get Patrick Mahomes off his rhythm, because if you can do that, then all of a sudden these mistakes will kind of start popping up. And I think the Chargers are a team that can capitalize. I mean, 100% if they have JC Jackson. We know how JC Jackson's a ball hawk. But again, much like his father, Asante Samuel Jr. is the same way. He's going to take opportunities. He's going to get burnt sometimes, but he's going to always be in that area where the ball is. And I think that could cause some issues for the Chiefs tonight.
Yeah, that Tyreek Hill component that you were talking about, I think he's one of one in the league. I mean, I don't think he's the best receiver in the league. I think Devontae Adams is, and then you can go to Cooper Kupp and a whole bunch of guys. But Tyreek Hill, to me, is top 5. But there's some plays, whether it's a handoff or a short slant or whatever, it almost feels like he's returning a punt, doesn't it? Like it just breaks open and he's off to the races. It's like, I remember, I'm a big Stanley Morgan fan. I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame, and we know a lot of people that kind of feel the same way. I think the greatest receiver in Patriots history, sensational, played an era when, 45 catches and 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns was monumental. Ron Earhart, who was the head coach, said, when we get the ball to Stanley Morgan, we count to 3. If he's not down, we get ready to kick the extra point. And that's kind of what it is with Tyreek Hill. Get him the ball, count to 3, and if the play's not over, then we're kicking an extra point here. That's the kind of speed separation.
Like, whoa, wait a minute, this this feels like a punt return or a kick return. So that's an element that I think Kansas City is going to miss in some games, certainly in a game like this where it's obviously a peak divisional round matchup, all that stuff. So so let's real quick, since we actually went over our time, let's give our picks real quick, and I think it might not be surprising, and we have the same one. So I'll start. I'll go. I have the Chargers win this game. Like I said, I think both teams are gonna split this season. I think they're both gonna pick up games on the road. So the Chargers win tonight in Kansas City.
Yeah, I like the Chargers tonight. I think they have such high end talent. Kansas City's still a Super Bowl contender, without question. Absolutely. I mean, this is a really fun matchup. Like I said, Thursday night contests are not very good generally, but the matchups this year look good because, again, if I'm Amazon and I wrote a check for $1 billion, I want some pretty good games here. I like the Chargers tonight. I think they'll step up, and it's a huge game for them because they can kind of not take control of the division 2 weeks in, but be a nice win for them in Kansas City. And then they meet again later in the year in LA. And like you said, the Chargers don't really have a home field advantage. There'll be more Chiefs fans in LA than Chargers fans. But I like the Chargers tonight. I think the quick turnaround, they'll be ready to go. And I think you're right, Ian. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, if they're able to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and drop a lot of guys into coverage, they'll do a good enough job to win this game.
Yeah, it should be fun. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow morning to obviously react to this game and then do our breakdown of week 2 because it's just around the corner. So thank you, everyone. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live. And, of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com, fullpresshockey.com, fullpresswrestling.com, and, of course, favorite all those websites because why not? Why not? We like when you come over and get views on the website. We like that. We appreciate it. Listen to the podcast, read all the great content, and we will talk to you tomorrow.